I joined the company when we had 6 studios all in New York. I used to run business development for Equinox, and I met the co-founders of SoulCycle in 2008 in the first studio on 72nd Street on the Upper West Side. And I knew then that there was something really special that they had created. It was this sort of magic of the social and the joy and the fun and the music. And we worked on a partnership where Equinox bought a majority interest in the business in 2011. And at that time, we underwrote the deal and thought maybe we could open 15 studios, maybe we could extend from New York to Los Angeles, maybe to San Francisco. But we really didn't have certainly the grand ambition or the plan to create what it is today. And I think one of the reasons we've been successful is we've just taken it one step at a time. You know, the first year that I started with the company, we opened 3 studios. And then we opened 7 studios, and then we opened 13 studios. And what we saw was we couldn't keep up with the demand for the product and the demand for the experience. So over the past few years, we've opened 15 studios. We're now in 14 markets. We'll have 70 studios by the end of the year. And now we're starting to really think about what's next.
Wonderful. So the quality of the instructors appears to be at the core of the SoulCycle experience. The good instructors lead to good classes, and that fosters the team culture. How do you train your teachers, and are you concerned about quality control as you expand the business?
Yeah. I think one of the most fun things about SoulCycle is our whole process from scouting all the way through training our instructors. We have a team of scouts that travel the country auditioning people to become SoulCycle instructors. We call it American Idol on a bike. They go from town to town and they put up on social media and say, we're here to audition future SoulCycle instructors. And we have well over 100 potential people that audition for every 20 slots in our training program. And I give you this context only because I think hiring is almost, if not more important, as the training that goes into creating our SoulCycle instructors. So once they are scouted and hired, we bring everybody to New York and we put them through a 12-week training program. And what we do is we deconstruct the SoulCycle experience down into the 3 key pillars: the physical, the musical, and the emotional. And at the end of the first 8 weeks, we teach them how to put it all together. After we do that, then our instructors run what we call community rides, where they teach rides to private audiences, so they can really get some practical experience. We're actually in community rides right now for our latest training group, and the energy in our space is so magical when you have these new instructors, and they're so passionate, and they're so eager to try their craft in front of these communities. And once we do that, after the end of the 4 weeks, we have a team that we call our programming or casting department that then decides where these instructors are going to go. I was just talking about this before I came on stage. A lot of an instructor's success is predicated on our ability to cast them into the right market. So are you a downtown 6 a.m. hard-charging rooster instructor? Or are you more of a nighttime Union Square party-starting instructor? And we have a whole team that's responsible for choreographing where each one of our 300 instructors teaches their classes to set them up for optimal success. So to answer your question, quality control is absolutely from the instructors to the operators to the studio operations to the facilities is of our utmost sort of focus and priority, because when you're growing at the pace that we are, you know, we'll see over 4 million rides this year. It's really important, I think, that you still stay dialed into the details.
Absolutely. So my next question is, SoulCycle is expensive, mostly for millennials who are college students. How does your pricing work relative to a gym membership? And is there any concern that the price of a class will impact your future growth?
Yeah, I mean, when we started the business, we always say we created a marketplace to put our product into. 10 years ago, there was no such thing as boutique fitness. There was yoga studios, but other than that, there really wasn't this idea of a pay-per-class model. And so the founders of SoulCycle created that. And what we did was we asked people to pay, at the time, $26 for something that you got for free with your gym membership. It was a bold move at the time. But what our founders believed, and we continue to believe, is that when you pay for something, especially if you pay for each class, you value what you pay for, and you bring a different energy to that experience because you've made that commitment and you're spending $34 for 45 minutes with us. And so far, I think that the energy that has created in the studios has proven out to be really successful for us. And you have seen over the last 10 years, the boutique fitness category now become a sort of a micro industry in and of itself.
Yeah, very much. And part of SoulCycle's success is the incredible energy and shared enthusiasm that's created in the studio. So SoulCycle has started selling bikes for home use now. How do you how do you plan on competing against companies whose sole focus is this market?
Yeah, so we've started selling our bikes in-home, frankly, just for riders that have asked for them. It's not really something that we're focused on right now, although we have sold hundreds of bikes to our riders who want the SoulCycle experience, either in their second homes or in their homes for times when they can't get to the studios. We really believe that in the world today, people are so connected through technology and devices that SoulCycle is the one place that you can go and disconnect from all of that. It's a place where you put your phone down for 45 minutes, you come into a dark room, usually with your friends, and have someone standing in front of you telling you that you could be stronger, not just on the bike, but in your life. And I don't know about you guys, but I can't count on one hand the amount of time during the week where I actually put my phone down for 45 minutes and invest just in myself. And we really believe that the power of what we create in those studios is so great and the market's so large for what we do that that's really where we're going to focus for now.
Absolutely. And I'm actually wearing SoulCycle gear right now. So how large of a market is there for the apparel? And also, will the apparel and bikes be sold outside of SoulCycle studios in the future?
Yeah. So our apparel business, it's a funny story. When we built our first studio on 72nd Street, we had $2,500 left over at the end. And we decided instead of taking out an ad for the new business, we would make a run of t-shirts and give them away. And what we found was within the first day of the studio opening, all of the t-shirts were gone. And so we made more t-shirts and then more t-shirts and started selling the t-shirts. And now the business has become a business in its own right. This year we'll do $25 million top line in our retail, which is our tiny, non-core business to the side. And what it really is the opportunity for our riders to sort of declare their loyalty to their tribe and be public about the fact that they're part of something. Our riders do take a real pride in the community that they're a part of, and they want to take a piece of it with them. And we're really excited, I think, about the opportunity to continue to extend this piece of our business, whether it be more space in our physical studios, on our e-commerce platform, or potentially longer term selling into non-SoulCycle locations.
Yeah. And speaking about the culture, how do you think that you've so successfully created this SoulCycle tribe and following?
Yeah, I think our culture is really what makes SoulCycle so unique, right? That's really the magic. Everyone at SoulCycle rides at SoulCycle. It's a huge part of what we do. And when you have 2,000 people who are experiencing your product every day, it really sort of becomes this self-fulfilling prophecy where they become your evangelists out in the world talking about what it is that we do. From the beginning, what we did first was get really clear on our core values, what it is that we stand for as a brand and as a business, what our product really means. And we have 10 core values, and I think a lot of companies you will see write down their core values and they put them back in the back of an HR manual and they put it on a shelf and they never revisit them again. Our core values are living and breathing parts of our experience. The first sort of, and the biggest, most prominent of our core values is we say we're a culture of yes. And what that means is there is a yes in every interaction in your day, whether it be with a rider who couldn't get into class. I'm going to prioritize you on the wait list for next class. I'm going to book you in early next week. I'm going to give you a piece of retail because you're really upset. I'm going to find a yes for you, right? And that carries all the way through to our leadership team. We want to make sure that even if we can't execute a marketing program, I'm going to find a yes for you in that. We're going to try something different. We're going to try it next month. We're going to invest in a little bit of a different way, but it sort of, what it does is that it creates this culture of problem solving and collaboration rather than this sort of siloed operation. And that's just one example. As I said, we've got 10 core values, and one of the ways that we live them is last year we created a core value pin program. We saw that pins, I don't know if you know, pins are trending, and we made these cards that say soul it forward. And on your year anniversary of working at SoulCycle, you get this card stock with our 10 core value pins. And it's your responsibility as a leader at SoulCycle to acknowledge when you see a colleague who's behaving in a way that embodies one of our core values. So I saw one of our leadership team members last week bring his entire team together to acknowledge our payroll coordinator who stayed up all night when our system went down to run manual payroll so everyone could get paid. It was so cool that he brought everyone together to acknowledge her. And so I gave him my gratitude pin. And I wrote him a card and I said, this is exactly what we're all about at SoulCycle. It's all about showing gratitude forward and showing gratitude in a public forum. And now he's wearing his gratitude pin. And this is something that's sort of taken off within our internal culture. We've got 2,000 people sending pins all over the country to each other, acknowledging work that they're doing out in the studios. And I really think that one of the reasons we have been so successful is because we live it, we breathe it, and we really believe not just in the product, but in the culture and what it is that we're creating.
Absolutely. So, in your experience as CEO, what has been your biggest challenge?
How long do we have? I think it's a very similar answer you'll hear from a lot of leaders. It's all about talent and finding and retaining great people. We are scaling a live experience every hour on the hour across the country. We have always treated SoulCycle as a curtains up, curtains down live production business. We want every class to be incredibly special, to be unique. And we want every rider having an incredible experience each time he or she comes in, because we know as a pay-per-class model, we're really only as good as our last ride. And so the challenge for me is to make sure that as we keep growing and opening 15 studios a year, 15 becomes 30, becomes 70, becomes 150, 2,000 people becomes 3,000 people, becomes 5,000 people. You have to make sure that you surround yourself with great people that really get it. And I think finding great people is really hard, and sometimes you make a mistake, and then you have to move fast and acknowledge you've made a mistake and change people out, and sometimes that can be even harder. But holding yourself accountable, again, to the true north of the culture and the values and the mission of the business is the way that I've been able to do it, but it really is a challenge.
And what's your biggest goal looking forward for the next few years?
My goal, I've said internally, is I would like to see 1 million people come to SoulCycle in one day. Right now we see about 22,000 people a day. I would like to get us to 1 million riders a day. So that's going to take a lot of work. It's going to take a lot of studios. I'm really excited. We just announced Toronto next year. Toronto is our first international location, and that's going to set us up with a beachhead for a whole international rollout. We'll go to the UK in 2018, which will be really exciting. But my goal, the mission of the business, we say, is to bring soul to the people. We believe that in an incredibly fractured world, and especially if you see what's gone on here in the last 10 days or so in this country, we have a very important role to play at SoulCycle in bringing people together. And when you bring 60 people into a room together and you put down phones and you put down judgment and you just go through this physical and emotional experience together, you start to view yourself in a different way, right? You see yourself as stronger, you see yourself as different, and if you can sort of change your outlook, then people around you, their outlook is going to start to change as well, and these micro communities are going to be born. And again, I think we have a big role to play to create unity in our communities, and people are looking for connection, and they're looking for a safe place to come, and we've seen this in the last 2 weeks in our business. People are really appreciating coming into a safe place and a safe sanctuary like SoulCycle. And for me, that's incredibly motivating for us to just go faster and go bigger, because for what we're creating with 17 studios in New York and 13 studios in Los Angeles, if we can duplicate that in cities like Toronto and London and Hong Kong and Sydney, then I think we could really start to create change in the world.
Wonderful. Those are all the questions that I have, so we're going to open it up to Q&A from the audience.
Oh, okay. Thank you so much for joining us and for giving this fireside speech. Chat. Just a quick question on how do you choose new locations to open, and how's the process of starting each new location as you expand?
So a couple of years ago, we undertook a real estate study, and we looked at, and a lot of large sort of retailers will do this, they'll look at the psychographic and demographic profile of your current portfolio and see what's made those studios successful. And then what we did is we established those factors and overlaid them across the entire US population, over 400 MSAs, or metropolitan statistical areas. And what we found is, what they told us, is there are 250 opportunities for SoulCycle in the US. At the time when we did the study, we had 38 locations. And opening between 10 and 15 studios a year, we've got a long runway of opportunity for us in the US. So that's sort of the science part. And then the art is, okay, so where do we go first? And what we've really done is we've tried to make sure that we've got real beachheads in the bigger markets that we're in, so in New York City and Los Angeles and San Francisco, and we open 1 to 2 new markets a year. As we open 1 or 2 new markets, those markets then go into the existing market bucket, and then we'll add 1 or 2 into those markets as we go, continuing to add new markets to the list every year. This year was a huge year. We opened 5 new markets. We've opened in Philadelphia, in Houston, in Austin, in Dallas, and we'll open Seattle by the end of the year. And so we're starting to pivot a little bit in terms of our new market versus existing market strategy, but we talk about this all the time. It takes us about 12 months from finding a location to when we open it, so we have to move now to impact 18. We already know where we're going to be through the first quarter of 18, And we have a really great team that's out there sourcing and scouting opportunities. And what we found is, with what's gone on in the retail industry over the last couple of years, retail slowing down, landlords are now calling us, and we have to say no a lot more often than we have to say yes, because what they want are tenants that can bring a real vibrancy to the communities that they're in, attract great traffic, create traffic often, and create energy for these projects. And because a lot of our business happens early in the morning or in the evening, we're great for complementary tenants for the parking that we're going into these projects with. So we've had to be really, really selective in terms of where we're going with the brand. Once we are ready to go and we know where we're going, about 16 weeks before we open, we have a 25-page checklist that we go through to open each one of our locations. And I do think one of the things that we've done really well, when I started, we had a one-page checklist, and every time we open a studio, we say, okay, what could we do better? What else should we add? What else should we try? What should we take off the list that isn't working for us anymore? And we just keep adding and adding, and now it's become our new studio's Bible. And it's a project that takes so many different teams within the organization. Your operations, your marketing, your PR, your talent, your facilities team, everybody's working together. So for me, it's one of the greatest things that we do every year is when we open a studio, because you see the whole organization come together, not just to work, but then to celebrate that we're in the new market.
Hi, I'm Uzo from Duke, representing the Relief Group. You mentioned about 10 years ago, there was no market for boutique fitness. How do you go about validating that people are going to want your product without them explicitly stating? So how did you go about validating that boutique fitness market and then sticking out throughout the 10 years and seeing it's hot now and popular?
I think it all started with an idea and a need that our two founders had. They couldn't find a workout that was fun in New York. One was from Los Angeles and one was from Colorado, and they were used to working out being really social and fun. They would go hiking with girlfriends, or they would take spinning classes in Los Angeles, and there really wasn't anything in New York that they saw to address what they wanted, which was, again, something that was social and joyful and based in community. So they really created it for them. The business model was, we're going to run 3 classes a day, 8:30, 9:30, 10:30. We're going to close this thing up by noon. We're going to pick our kids up from school, and that's kind of going to be that. And what they heard when they opened was, we love this. This is amazing. There's nothing like this. So they started adding classes. And then they just listened to the riders. One of the things I think we do really well at SoulCycle is we listen to our riders. If they say they want something, we're going to give it to them, or we're going to try to give it to them. We receive over 100,000 emails a year into our Your Soul Matters inbox, and we respond to every single one of them. And we take notes on what our riders are telling us. So, I think the lesson is to just start with something you know in your heart, that there is a need for that, but then just to put one foot in front of the other. That's at least how we have been successful. We didn't start with saying we want to see 1 million people a year and change the world through changing people's perceptions of themselves. That was not the idea. The idea was to create something that was really social and joyful and a great experience, and then we just continue to innovate on that. So we have a program called Super Soul. Super Soul, do you guys know what Super Soul is? You can pay double for your SoulCycle classes, and we have a team of concierges who will book your classes for you. The way our reservation system works is we release a week's worth of inventory Monday at noon. Our schedule goes live, and everybody pounds the servers and books. 30% of our weekly reservations are gone within 5 minutes. So what that creates is a need, and one of our riders said, I can't deal with this Monday at noon thing. I'm not at my computer. I don't like that I don't get what I want. I'd pay double if I could just have somebody do this for me. So we said, okay, and Super Soul was born. And now we see a lot of people through that program who also don't want to be bothered with signing up for their bikes. And so that's just one example of how we just listen to the riders and continue to innovate on the experience, because they'll tell you. People will tell you, especially today in the world of social media. They'll tell you what they want.
Just one up here.
Hi, thank you so much for coming. My question relates to the barriers to entry to your business. So given that it's relatively easy to replicate the business model, especially I was in London this summer, so there's a lot of people talking about spinning. What are kind of like your strategies and ideas of how to counter that, kind of like how to continue being relevant and how to build your brand of SoulCycle in comparison to other competitors that are coming into the market? Thank you.
Did you ride at Cycle in London? Okay. Yes, we always say that imitation is the sincerest form of flattery and frustration, because we were the first movers in this space, and there have been a lot of people trying to do what we do behind us. The way that we think about it and the way that we, I would say, continue to occupy the leadership position that we're in is we just challenge ourselves to do it better and better every time. We view ourselves as our own competition. And we really view our writers' time as our competition. I say a lot that my biggest competition is Netflix. They put out great programming. There's a lot of it. You guys stay on your couches and watch it, and then you don't come to class in the morning. So we just have to make sure that we're creating this really compelling experience and that we continue to innovate ourselves out of our own category. We created this category. Everyone's coming behind us. And I always say I'd rather be best to market than first to market. We might go into a small town where there's an incumbent player that's doing what we do, something, spin cycle, that's sort of like what we do. We do it best. We are the first and we are the most authentic. We just have to make sure that our product is the best. And I say we're a company of micro innovation. We're not going to completely change what we do, but we're going to introduce little things along the way. This year we introduced new shoes that have a whole bunch of functionality that were different than our older shoes that nobody else is doing. We've got a partnership with Shimano that we did that. We introduced USB charging ports into our lockers so that people can actually charge their phone while they're in class. We popped up, we're about to actually pop up in Aspen for the winter holidays so that our riders can continue their experience with us, or people will try us that haven't tried us before. So we just want to keep sort of surprising and delighting our riders and innovating our own experience and making sure it's the best that we know it can be. Ultimately, that way we don't have to worry about everyone else that's sort of nipping at our heels.
So you mentioned earlier that Equinox took a pretty big stake in SoulCycle. I was wondering if you could talk more about that transaction and kind of the strategic logic behind that.
So the origins of the conversations between Equinox and SoulCycle were really around creating a strategic partnership because the founders wanted to grow their business, but the real estate acquisition and development side can be tough. It can certainly be tough as a startup in markets like New York and Los Angeles. And Equinox as a business, they're primarily owned by the Related Companies, which is one of the largest development companies in the world. Equinox has been around for 25 years, and they've got great operational and real estate experience. And it was really this great strategic partnership where a very powerful but small brand came together with a larger brand that had years of experience in real estate development. And this sort of was the best of both worlds. We've always operated the companies entirely separately. So SoulCycle has its own offices, its own management team. Now we've got our own financing structure in place. And so we're run separately, but our real estate acquisition is managed by the Equinox team, there is no doubt that our success is due to, and certainly our growth profile is due to the team over at Equinox.
Hi there. Thank you for your talk. You said you constantly listening to your riders, constantly doing micro innovations and improving your product. I was just wondering, sort of as an organization, how you stay on top of all those innovations, manage it, implement it, and manage to actually listen to all 100,000 customers who are actually giving you ideas.
Yeah, so we have an incredible team is the short answer. Everyone is responsible in the organization for listening to our riders, for being a part of our experience. When you're riding in a studio, you're going to see things that frustrate you as an employee, things that we could do better, ways that we could call the wait list in a different way, things that we could try with the retail business. And it's really part of our culture is that we give feedback and we all talk to each other. And when it's done in a way that's with this idea of culture of yes, right? I'm coming to you with an idea because I think we could do it better. And the people that we have on our teams are really open to receiving it rather than saying, no, this is how we do the retail, we're not gonna try that. They're the sort of people that say, that's a great idea, we should try this. We are probably the most healthily paranoid group of people on the planet. We spend a lot of time on the internet late at night. We spend a lot of time trying other fitness concepts, meditation concepts. We have a whole email thread going from yesterday about a new concept that someone on our team has tried that we think we can incorporate some of their thinking into the studios. But it really does just come down to the kind of people that we hire and the sort of culture that we create. which is a real culture of entrepreneurialism and ownership. And when people feel like they're an owner in the business and they really care about the business, they are going to bring great ideas, and then you're going to create this sort of culture of innovation within the four walls. And it's something that we've worked really hard in doing, but again, it all comes down to the kind of people that you hire and the sort of communication channels that you create.
Hi. Thank you so much for speaking. I had a question. So given the relatively high price point of SoulCycle, in regards to your long-term strategy, let's say 5 to 10 years down the future, I think hypothetically, if you were to extrapolate this, you would hit some sort of revenue ceiling on your addressable market because of the fact that a lot of people can't afford to pay those prices. So given that problem, do you plan to introduce, for example, a lower tiered business or somehow pivot in regards to your core business, not talking about branding, not talking about apparel or anything like that?
So the price point now is we're $34 in New York, and then we're $30 outside of New York. And we are now looking at some of the newer markets that we'll be going into at a $28 price point. And I think what's important for us is that people do really value what they paid for, and even if they're only able to ride with us 1 or 2 times a week, we want to make sure that that experience is really special. And we will continue to invest in that experience and make sure that people do really find value in what they do. So far, price and with the markets that we're in has really not been a topic of conversation because the experience that we create is really unique. And as we've seen, as I mentioned, with the retail and what's happened in the retail world over the last couple of years, it's sort of given rise to what is known as the experiential economy. People are paying premiums for experiences, especially millennials. They really want these experiences that are authentic and connected and physical and joyful. And we're seeing it in the new markets that we go into, that people are willing to pay for that.
Coming, I've been a couple times in Chicago's Loop, and big fan. So my question is, how did you choose to IPO now? And you talk to us a little bit about going public and why not earlier and why now?
Yeah, so we are in a quiet period around an IPO, which is just you can't talk that much about the business while you're in a quiet period. What I can tell you that was at the genesis of the IPO was really around our separating off from Equinox. As I said, we put our own capital structure into place, and when we bought the business when I was on the Equinox side, we again thought this was going to be a small division of Equinox, and the growth profile has been so tremendous that we recognized that we needed to split off and spin free from Equinox and establish our own capital structure, and the IPO was a part of that.
So you were mentioning earlier about the core values of your brand and the brand that you're representing, and what it would be really interesting for me, it would be about the internal strategy that you have, because I was there this morning and I found it fascinating and inspirational. From the messages written on the walls, the shoes, and your staff, everyone believes in this concept, and it's really fascinating for someone that really wants to have a startup nowadays. And yeah, maybe you can tell us, how do you manage to transmit them these values and to make them afterwards to transmit them to your clients?
I think beyond establishing the values and then just creating innovative ways to live them, so whether that be in a PIN program or an internal, we have what's called the SoulCycle, which is our weekly company-wide acknowledgement of someone that's lived a core value in a certain way, and we encourage our staff to all write in to honor into a pool, and then we choose every week someone who's got a great story and we publish it back out to the company. We've created an internal tool we call the Wheel, which is our own sort of internal Facebook messaging system. But what it all to us really comes down to is training and development. All of our training really centers around not just the tactics of how to operate a studio, how to write a budget, how to create a marketing plan, but how to live our core values, how to give feedback, how to receive feedback, how to bring energy, or what we call set the weather in a studio, how to get unstuck about something, which is when something's really frustrating you. How can I coach you to become unfrustrated about it, not in a way that's griping, but in a way that's completely objective, so you actually can resolve how you feel about the issue. We've created over 100 proprietary training programs over the last 5 years for our teams. And what that does is create career trajectory for the teams that are with us. So someone starts on the front desk, they become an assistant studio manager, and then a studio manager, and then an area manager. And it creates so much opportunity for these young entrepreneurs with us because we've invested so much in their training and development. They then become cultural carriers. You know, great thing about a high growth company is everybody's thrown into their job way too early, right? All of a sudden your area manager's running 3 studios, now she's running 10. She's running 1 market, now she's running 4. We were opening in Houston, Texas. We had a guy who'd been a studio manager for 8 weeks. I was like, you're going to Texas, baby. He's like, I don't even know how to close the studio at night. I'm like, exactly, see you in Houston. And he's killed it. And he's killed it because we gave him an opportunity. We gave him the tools, we gave him the framework, but then he ultimately went and he made it happen. And that's because he's a great person, and he's incredibly entrepreneurial, and because we saw potential in him. And our instructors are no different. You know, we scout from a wide variety of backgrounds. We don't really scout from the fitness industry. We look for people that can hold the energy of a space, that are really inspirational and energetic people, and then we'll teach them how to count backward from 8. That's a lot easier than how to hold the energy of a room, right? We see potential in people. And what that creates is sort of this magic culture, right? Where they're like, hey, Melanie saw potential in me, and Julie saw potential in me, and Becky saw potential in me, and now we're all together in Houston. We got to make it happen for these guys. And that's really, I think, that, you know, again, the hiring and the training and just the acknowledgement and living these core values has really been what's created what you probably saw in the studio this morning.
Great. We have time for one more question.
Okay, so my name is Michael. Thank you for coming here. So this question is more about the strategic side for SoulCycle during tough economic times. So we kind of see a recession every 10 years, and since SoulCycle is it has a very high pricing strategy, so I see the lack of spending power during those years actually can negatively impact SoulCycle. So one response I foresee you may say is that SoulCycle is about inspiring people, so it may help during the tough economic times. But also when it comes to actually the financials, I want to know like what kind of strategic plans SoulCycle has inside to defend against the kind of bad macroeconomics.
Yeah, so you're absolutely right. That's how I'm going to answer the question, that it's about inspiration. And, you know, I lived through 2008 when I was at Equinox. And Equinox is also very similar. It's a place where people go to disconnect and to invest in themselves. And what we saw in 2008 is that while the business didn't grow, it actually stayed flat. We didn't get a lot of new members into Equinox at the time, but people didn't give up their membership. And they didn't give it up because they gave up their vacations, their dinners out, maybe their second home, camps for their children. But this was the one thing that they had for themselves, and so they held strong and held firm. And while we have only lived through 2008 when we had 4 studios, so we don't have a big data set to see, I do think that SoulCycle will fare similarly, as people will still want that outlet for themselves in a more difficult time. The great thing about our business model, though, and if you read our S1, 50% of our operating costs are variable, right, within the studios. So our instructor payroll, our front desk, our cleaning staff, all of that can be yield managed. So to the extent that our top line softens, we can cut cost and still maintain our contribution margin. And that way, you know, really what people are looking for in a recession of any kind is your debt holders want to be paid back, your shareholders want to be taken care of, and they just want to know that the cash is going to be there. And the business model does work in such a way that we can protect our cash position, even if we've got a softer top line.
Great. Well, thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you, guys.